Communications has been promoting the Catholic faith and serving the nation through both traditional and new media. Hear us tackle national issues in light of Christian values on Usapang Kapatid, Pasakalye, and Radio Veritas. Watch our uplifting reflections on Kapet Pandasal and The Word Exposed, as well as our acclaimed TV specials. Listen to the inspiring and soothing music of Jesuit Music Ministry's original artists as you read our spiritually enriching books. To learn more about jescom's mission of evangelization and education, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and our website, jescom.ph. To give a face to the faceless and a voice to the voiceless, that we may recognize Christ in them and hear His story in theirs. Get your daily dose of inspiration through our music. Follow jescom.ph on Spotify and jescom Music in YouTube.
Radyo-Katipunan, 87.9 FM.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugo, todo sa kayod, punong at tulong. Lipad na Blue Eagle, galing hiding at tigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan.
Okay.
Good afternoon. It's Joey Roy. Every Thursdays on RK Asks is our science, technology, and society show. We don't have our regular COVID update yet, unless Dr. Butch will come on later. Then we'll get our COVID update. But today we have a very interesting topic. It was suggested by Justin Pontino, our station manager. And so we asked, the topic is indigenous medicine in relation to COVID and to mental health. And we thought of inviting an anthropologist, and his name is Felipe Jocano, otherwise known as Bot. Bot, welcome to Radio Katipunan, RK Asks. You want to
Hello.
greet our listeners?
Hello everyone, kamusta sa mga katipunero? Lahat ng mga katipunero on all sides of Katipunan. And you know what I mean?
Yes. Both what is you're a professor at UP Diliman, right?
Yes.
What do you teach? What do you
Well, I teach anthropology. Usually, my main focus is cultural anthropology, but my research interests vary a lot. On the course of time, I've done some work on medical anthropology. So I also give lectures at the Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health, the ASMPH.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh.
So you also give lectures there on a traditional
medical
medicine.
Yes.
Medical anthropology.
Partly on traditional knowledge as what relevance this would be for doctors, for instance. This is to alert them to how patients may come to them seeking help, and the language they'll use will be very, very different.
Yes, so we can
also,
talk about that later.
Yeah.
But before we go on, you also have your virtual background is actually your love of life.
Well, that's my other side when I'm not teaching. That's the logo for the Arnis Association.
The Arnis Association.
Yes, I founded several years ago. Actually, it's I used the name because from my guru who was a Yakan, because he taught me silat, right? And then I incorporated the teachings of my teachers who taught me Arnis as well. So the baybayin, but hindi siya nag-fit sa screen, but it's called, basically refers to Telo Bituun Bagani, the 3 stars warrior. Okay, and each of the swords in the background represents a sword from one of the regions of the Philippines. So there's one there from Luzon. We call that the Dinahong Palay. The second one is the Pinuti coming from the Visayas, and then the Barung, the one that pointed upward, which is from Mindanao. Yan. So
all right.
The ideology.
Before you go, so that's an Arnis group. It teaches Arnis, no?
Yes. Well, I teach Arnis and Silat and some other martial arts like Kung Fu.
Yeah, so Arnis is indigenous. Arnis is indigenous.
Yes. Our art is indigenous. It's a combination of both indigenous practice and what came about from the Spaniards ng foreign occupation nila. Because the Spaniards were quite busy organizing local militia to protect themselves against the raids from the south, from the Moros. So the material they taught was spread quickly throughout the population. And then you have many stories from the Visayas about the priests. Oh yes, some of them are Jesuits who were former soldiers. Ayan, ang masaya.
That might be for another show, huh? That might be for another show.
In that case, I would recommend one of my friends who dug deeply into this, Mr. Elric Jandis, because he looked deeply into it. And yes, there has been a record of priests, former soldiers who entered the priesthood when they were assigned to the Philippines, and they organized the civilians into a local militia to defend against the raids from the
south.
From the south.
Yes.
That is an interesting history because some of them were Jesuits too, and I think maybe my friend would have lot more detail because.
All right. So we'll schedule that for later. But, so there's Dr. Vallejo.
Hi, Ben.
Seems to be violating the quarantine. Where are you?
But this in full protective gear. All right.
Where are you, Dr. Vallejo? You're taking
Ben, nakamute ka pa.
We cannot hear you.
Ben, nakamute ka.
Yes, sir.
Oh, sa Dapitan Street.
Oh, you're all the way in Manila.
Oh, kasi yung training program namin, we have to get all the materials na.
So you're joining us? Oh. You're joining us, or are you just saying hello?
By Zoom. On the road. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Nice
I was just saying, Dr. Bot here is actually has noble blood in the sense that his father is no less than Eflanda Jocano, who is actually quoted a lot by the Jesuits. Bot.
Oh,
But
really?
because of what
This I
you
would love
said
to know.
about
Oh,
the Filipinos being intrinsically divisive.
this I would love to know because it would be fun to have a greater
I
dialogue.
already
A lot
told
has
you that
changed
I
since then.
wanted to write an introduction to F. Lando Jocano's thought, no, in a
Sige,
theater.
go. Let's do
Anyway,
something about it. Yeah.
so Ben, before we continue, do you want to give an update, or will we wait for Butch to give
Update
an update
on
on the
what
COVID?
COVID. Well, our Butch knows the stats though, but we are going down in the number of
Oh,
cases. And
wow. Good to
however,
hear.
too early for us to celebrate kasi we likely are to follow what's happening in other countries na second rise in
Oh,
cases.
no. Uh-oh.
So we just need to, yung exact stats kasi is with Butch eh. But I'm aware talaga bumababa. But of course, there are some things to remember. No? Kaya nag-expand naman yung testing natin. But some of the testing statistics would show na medyo hindi tumataas yung testing rate natin. Baka yung mga tao naging complacent na sige, okay na naman, hindi na ako magpapatest. No? Yun ang danger doon. No? We should be still testing and wearing masks and face shields. Diba? Yun. Kasi kung hindi
All right.
then there's not DOH we won't be able to report anything to DOH. No, I think our testing should still go up, so we are sure that we are really on the downtrend sa infections. Ayun.
All right. So, but
Yeah.
I will ask Ben to give
Sure.
us why is anthropology part of the STS program or curriculum?
Oh boy. I think sino sa amin sasagot? Si Ben o ako?
Si
Anthropology.
Ben muna.
O sige.
Ben muna. Okay.
Well,
Ben.
remember that STS deals with human culture, so anthropology will
Right.
always be there. And besides, science is also something. Science is a community, so there will always be a sociological and anthropological dimension to it.
Ayun.
So we need to look into it.
So I will ask Ben first the controversial question before I ask it to you both. No?
Oh boy.
So is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as indigenous medicine or traditional medicine?
Good.
Paano nandiyan si Butch?
Sayang. Where's Butch when we need him?
He has to meet with some patients. Yun ang alam ko.
So how will you answer that question, Ben? Is there such a indigenous medicine or traditional medicine?
Yeah, I think there are many different systems of medicine. So if we call it indigenous, then probably we're referring it from a Western point of view. So I think ngayon nata sinasabi na lang there is a Chinese system of medicine. That's what I from Butch lectures, no? And there is our Filipino system, and of course the system that is in the West, no? And in India may mga systems din sila of medicine. So
yeah. So I did some very little research. It says WHO supports scientifically proven traditional medicine. So meron naman. So there is in fact a kind of convergence between the WHO and traditional medicine. So I'll ask Bot na.
Yeah, okay.
Do you find people saying, hindi naman yan medicine, indigenous medicine?
Oh yeah. You get to see that when I was all right. You get to hear and see about that. Huh? For example, kino-question yung mga traditional cures. I'll clarify that one you said WHO and what you read out was WHO or
yes.
DOH. Yeah.
WHO. Yeah.
All right. The DOH. All right. The thing is here, the recent efforts in ginagawa ng WHO is to also have traditional medicine go through a process of evaluation and testing, similar to what you do for clinical trials for different medicines. All right. This is significant because then, actually, in some cases, pharma firms have an interest in this because plants that have been claimed to have this known therapeutic properties are often assessed for the possible pharmacological value. The pharma people at the PGH, although it's been a long time since I had the chance to talk with them again about this, we're very much interested in continuing this. They evaluate medicine based on both the toxicological and the pharmacological properties.
All right.
Ito
So
mga
let's
herbal
let's
medicines.
tease that out for our audience. So you have the
Yeah.
toxicological and the
Pharmacological
Ano
properties.
yung toxicological?
Well, for example, some kinds of herbal medicines might have some unexpected
For example,
dangerous properties.
poisonous properties.
Mga ganon, okay?
Toxicological
You can't really tell until you do a screening.
So what might be an example of that?
I'm trying to remember some of the things they were telling me about, but in general, the way in which the medicines were mixed and compounded into the mixture na either administered as a paste or swallowed as a medicine, especially kung orally taken, which I think has seen more of the on the side from the medical side. In terms of pharmacological properties, on the other hand, well, you now have some supplemental medicines that are proven to ease respiratory problem symptoms. Lagundi, for example. Diba? So it has this property of being able to ease the symptoms. It's not a cure, but it's certainly very, very helpful in making the life of the patient more comfortable. So yung mga ganyan, those are things that we aim to look for. And in fact, actually, the history of Western medicine, of pharmacology, is actually based on folk medicine nila. For example, one of the drugs used to treat heart disease, digitalis, actually came from a flower called the foxglove. And it was part of the indigenous knowledge of the local healers in the English and European countryside before, when medicine assumed a more scientific turn by evaluating and with the use of methods of chemistry to assess and assay the medicines. Sa kanilang na-isolate yung particular compound na yan. And then it was nagawa ng paraan para i-manufacture siya on a larger commercial scale. But it originally came from a 16th century, 18th century manual. Yun.
So yung bang indigenous natin, that's of course different from what we inherited from the Mexicans and from
to some extent, yes. A great extent.
Pero talagang indigenous Filipino, indigenous na.
What do you mean? Kung talagang
that's not something that like something that we inherited from the Mexicans.
Yung separate from medicine. That? Separate from that? Well, now you would have to explore the ethnographies of different indigenous groups, yung mga IPs dito, in order to find out some of these. There's an excellent example. I think this was one of the old numbers of the Philippine Journal of Science, Dr. Robert Fox, right? And his ethnography was on the Aita of the Pinatubo back in the 1950s. I'm not sure if the Philippine Studies Journal has an equivalent article somewhere, because Dr. Fox published extensively in both PSJ and the Philippine Studies Journal. But part of the chapter, it's been a long time since I looked at it, but part of the chapter is about the Aita and their pharmacology and their entire pharmacopoeia. And up to now, I am not certain whether anyone has actually tried to explore both the cultural and the possible medicinal benefits from a contemporary point of view. Right?
All right.
But of course, there are many issues that go along with that. We'll get to that.
You give lectures in AM. You are going to share some slides with us. Ben, are you still there?
Well,
video because mahina yung signal.
Sige. Just say something when you need to, huh?
Well,
are you going to share us? You're going to share slides.
Whenever you guys
can do that.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Well, which of the areas would you want me to focus on? Because the slide that I have ready is the one on
mental health.
Sige.
Yeah, let's do that.
You ready? You want me to show it? Okay.
Yes.
Sige. Let's see. All right. So, and here we go. I'm sharing the screen now. Ayan. Okay. This is just part of, it was a PDF. All right. Let me know, please, when it's, yeah. Is it showing already?
No.
Not yet. Well, it's still loading.
There it is. There it is.
All right.
Yes.
So I'll go back to the very first. We'll just have a quick run through because normally when I give this one, it's a 3-hour class. So we'll just do this in 10 minutes or less. You see here, I titled this one here at the crossroads of anthropology, culture, psychiatry, because we look at local behavior, but our academic discipline as anthropologists, and then of course, psychiatry as the medical field here. And in overview dito, this one, psychiatry among all the different medical fields has been the one most heavily influenced by cultural symbols. So, for example, napaka-powerful na picture na to, if you think about it in terms of an illness like depression. Bakit? Emptiness, the world is gray and white, black, and gray, na wash out ang meaning. I love that term, wash out. Okay. What about this one?
Can I interrupt you first, because
Dr. Ong.
Butch
All right,
is there.
Butch.
Dr. Ong is there.
Hi, Butch.
Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Sorry
Hello.
for
Butch, but it's just going to give some points first, and then we'll go to your update in 10 minutes, after 10
Okay.
minutes. All right. Sige, but.
So ito. All right. So, see, this is very much cultural because then what the medical field in the Western medicine says, that's depression. Dito, enlightenment. For example, this case is in Sri Lanka, right? Which is primarily a Buddhist country. And among the medical fields, at least at the time that I came across this material, there were psychiatric illnesses were much underreported compared to physical ailments, especially when it comes to depression. Schizophrenia is another matter, right? That's a different category altogether. But that's what we mean when we say culture can shape the subject matter, and therefore, how will the scientific part of medicine be applied? And that's why it can create a surprise. So in the anthropology of psychiatric treatment, we look at both ethnopsychiatry, how psychiatric phenomena and treatment are manifested in a given setting. And then, of course, this one is the bigger, more theory-building, cultural psychiatry. I'm drawing this from Hellman. Okay? And usually, we look at what do we call normality and normality, and of course, social change. The impact of social change, urbanization, poverty, disasters. And now, that's why this one, I'll be updating this again ASAP because now pandemics, we're going to include another category, pandemics. What impact do they have on mental health? And that's why here, the definition here that we often use, an illness, which is of course different from, we look at how cultural factors affect patients' perceptions and behavior, the content of hallucinations, delusions, which are this is what most people know mental illness to be, the attitudes of others. Are there some, anthropologists ask these two questions, are there some aspects of behavior that are normal and abnormal in a pan-human sense? Increasingly, you have some mental illnesses that are pan-human. Schizophrenia again, for example. People break loose from reality across cultures, and although the content that they talk about is different, but the fact of breaking free from these elements is very, very much present. What about this one? Are these what you call this, universal and transcultural, or are they more specific to the cultural pressures and conditioning? That's another question to look at, right? Then, in here, when we say culture in this sense, this is what we use. Symbols, meanings, practices. This is a more cognitive view of culture. Of course, this one, practices includes not just behavioral movement, but also even artifacts. An artifact is an expression of a culture. Okay, archaeologists would be looking more into that, but yes, that's how it is. And then, of course, there's this: how do you get well? How do you get ill? And how do you treat the ill? Right? So when we look at this, there are basically 4 axes coming from quoting from Hellman. You have the normal and the abnormal, and the controlled and the uncontrolled. And if you create a cell base dito, you have controlled normality. That's us in our everyday lives, what we do now. You have controlled abnormality, temporary relief, and that includes even some forms of temporary breaks from reality, language of distress, such as stress, claims of possession, trance, even just simply, yung parang nawala sa sarili sandali. You get into a few, suddenly you wake up, you're somewhere else. You're still coherent, you just dissociated for a while. Maraming kwentong ganon. And then this one, uncontrolled abnormality. This is where the work of psychiatrists do. And one of the more vivid graphic pictures where kids comes in is this one. The voices in your head, right? And then, of course, uncontrolled normality, criminal behavior. Now, we won't go into that muna, no? But we'll look at, well, I made some pop culture references.
What you're saying, Bot, is that all of that will have a... Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you hear me, Bot?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
so
yes,
what you're saying is that yung Filipino would have a definition of sickness, of abnormality.
That's what we're getting to. Yeah, that's
Filipino.
what we're getting to. O yan, dito tayo. Right? See, ito. Here's an example. Ito. All right. Here's an example for context-bound disorders. So, sa mga Pinoy, meron din nag-aamok. Excuse me a moment. Huh? These are context for their specific cultures. Yung isa, amok. Yung isa, sinapian. Yung sapi. No? I'll show you something that we did back in 2016. Right? When we talk about this, we had a project with me and several colleagues from the Department of Psychiatry. We were looking at this, the context of mental illness, okay? The project started in 2008, and then we had it presented in 2016, okay? And so this was part of the publication of the book, Tagalog Notions of Mental Illness and Healing. This was supposed to be a long-term project. Sana yung major languages umpisahin namin, and then we were going to look at the smaller language groups. Kaso, we got as far as this, and then we had to get...
What? This has been published?
Yes.
What? This has been published?
Yes. By the Philippine Psychiatric Association. Yeah. It's been published by the Philippine Psychiatric Association. Look at these terms. Huh? These are terms that are, na-elicit namin from the press. Obviously, some of these are borrowed. Nakita niya? Pero itong dalawa reflect a different form of local experience. Ito, na-borrow ito from the medical terminology to express in local conditions of distress. So for example, ano yung depress? Normal daw yun. Can you imagine this? It's part of the stress of everyday life. Na kung yung context mo is Metro Manila life, at talagang may depress. But dito siya, yung behavioral dimension, meron siya dito. These are things that are similar to what you would find in the textbook approach dito from foreign authors included. Pero may mga significant terms dito. For example, dito, pinabayaan yung aral o trabaho. Right? I also often read the page called ADMU Freedom Wall. Right? Sa mga...
You do?
I do. Right. Well, I do. I
don't. What do you read there? What do you read there?
Itong hinighlight ko. Maraming ganun. Oo. And yung many of these, since it's anonymous, these are cries for distress. Right? Hoping somebody would pick up and hear it because for one reason or another, hindi nila kayang ikwento sa mga kakilala at kaklose nila. Same thing happens for the UP Diliman Freedom Wall. I read both. It's very interesting because it gives an insight into these kinds of conditions. And then ito din, na na-express dito yung pagkainit ng ulo. Ayun. Extreme anger sometimes.
Ano nga ba ibig sabihin kaya nun sa atin? Itong uminit ang ulo.
Ano siya? Pag
Is
yung,
that something...
I think it's more about yung pag nawala na ng control. Jovi, nawala yung ano mo, audio mo. I lost your audio for a moment. Okay?
Yeah, I think my internet
Okay.
unstable now.
Could you repeat
Can you
the
hear me
question?
now?
I can hear you now. Can you repeat
So
your question?
when we say mainit ang ulo, that's indigenous or that's really is that like kasi sa English naman hot-tempered, no? Pero sa atin yung ulo, or is that literally na rin na
Dito.
ano natin umiinit?
Okay.
Talaga naman mainit sa Pilipinas. Pero ano ibig sabihin ng mainit ang ulo?
Folk medicine view.
Ganun.
Yung physiological dito sa bumbunan. Yung mainitin ng ulo, yung hot-tempered, kinakapa ng mga healers dito. Pag mainit-init dito, ibig sabihin may tendency siyang magalit. Okay?
Ayun.
So there are some things you don't do or say to somebody who's been known to have this. Kaya mainit ang ulo. Actually, may
literal yun, no?
Literal. But consider this, ha? That
Physiological.
is a sensation, culturally defined sensation centered on the head or on a part of the body. It's culturally defined pero nililink siya sa behavioral pattern. You see?
Okay.
Ito, that's just one, ha? In fact, the init ng ulo is part of a bigger dimension ng folk medicine called hot and cold, init-lamig. May parts ng katawan na mainit, may part ng katawan malamig. Lahat
Diba?
sa
Lamig
harap,
is
mainit,
supposed to be
cold.
the source of ngalay, di ba?
Yes.
Lamig.
Pag sumobrang lamig, mangangalay. Kung katamtamin lamig, komportable ka. Pag sumobra ang init, magkakasakit ka rin. So, seasonal change, ina-attribute sa shift ng hot and cold. When in fact, another explanation.
Yung what is related to infection, ano ang mga ano
yung
natin
hawa. That's a different story entirely. O yung hawa. Yan. So dito, may cognitive parts dito sa depressed, ganon. And then, ito. So, causes dito. Many of we got this actually from discussion groups. We got this from FGDs, by the way, dito sa Urban Metro Manila. So, ano daw yung, ito, the top two, breakdown in family relationships and the perception of excessive suffering. And you know, in pop culture, ang daming ganito, yung perception of excessive suffering. Marami ganito sa popular culture.
Right.
For example, Sharon Cuneta's movie about the suffering, yung parang Cinderella type, yung pasan ko ang daigdig. Right? Yung binubuhat dito. That's one. And marami, this is a popular theme and it draws heavily from cultural experience. Perception. So, ano implications sa therapy? For understanding that, how do you strengthen this?
All right.
Na hindi lang siya yung
this
mga
seems to be the perfect time to stop for a while, no? I'll go back to this itong therapy na. But we'll go to Butch for now, no? Speaking of Pagurusa.
I-stop ko muna yung screen, ha?
Yes, that's exactly where we'll pick it up. Therapy.
Yes, okay, all right, right.
Dr. Ong, do you have an update for COVID, or do you have something to add with regard to indigenous medicine?
Oh, I'll just give an update first, no? Kasi fresh from the press.
All right.
Fresh from the press. So I'll be sharing with you our latest Okta research update, no? So I'll just share my screen. All right. So you've probably been hearing. Can you see it? Can you see my screen? All right. So you're probably now well aware of Okta right now. No? We've been making the media rounds, and this is our latest report. It'll just be a short report, giving you what the highlights are, no? So the total cases we have now is around, as of October 12, is 342,816 total cases since we began counting, no? Way back in the start of the pandemic, the first quarter. No? Now, we estimate that we might have around 390,000 total cases by the end of October, which is actually not that bad, no? Because of the following. Because our reproduction number in the whole country is on the decline, no? So our value is still less than 1 at 0.88, and in NCR we have an R value of around between zero point 0.7 and zero point 0.8. It was around 0.75. So this continuous downtrend is actually quite encouraging for all of us as we begin to open our industries. You might have heard that Boracay is opening up its hospitality industry. The resorts and hotel businesses there are beginning to open. Plus our transportation sector, they're now beginning talks on how to safely open the jeepneys, the buses, the trains, etc. No? So as we begin opening up several industries, no, we are encouraged at the decrease or decline in the R value. I might add that these are not at all irreversible. No? So maaari tayo magkaroon ng mga slight increases and we might have a surge actually if we are not careful, if we are not vigilant pa rin, no? So
Is
we
this what ano parang sinasabi ni Ben kanina, that policy shouldn't be to lift the quarantine?
yes, no. There is a difference kasi between lockdown and quarantine. No? Lockdown means all sectors are halted. Everyone stays at home, but that's not what we are having now. Now we are opening up industries. People are actually allowed to go out as long as they belong in the right age group and they are not within the vulnerable sector. No, so what we're saying is that the quarantine restrictions should still be there. The general quarantine restrictions should still be there. Elderly, the young ones, the one who are vulnerable, no, and maintain strictly our minimal health standards. That's just physical distancing, masks, sanitizing our homes and ourselves. No, so we must still practice that. And I've been saying in all my radio interviews that even if we have a zero COVID status in the country, the whole country is supposedly zero, let's say, no, we should not let up our guard. No, we should still, for a while, and perhaps, hopefully, I'm glad Professor Jocano is here. No, perhaps get a new culture, no, culture of prevention, culture of resilience. No, so if you notice people in South Korea, people in Japan, they wear masks even if there are no outbreaks. No, so they go out. No, they always wear masks. No? Perhaps we can follow the same. No, masks are not just for COVID. They can be for flu, they can be for measles, chickenpox, etc. No? So it will be good practice as well. No? Now, the next slide, I'll just show one more slide. No, this is the last slide. The positivity rate for NCR is still at 8%. No, the WHO recommends a positivity rate of 5% or lower. No, to indicate that the situation of COVID is well under control already. No? But the positivity rate again is also not irreversible. No? So kaya nga sinasabi natin palagi na kapag mababa na ang number of cases, ngayon dapat tayo mas vigilant. No? Kasi binabantayan na natin ang gains na nakuha natin for the last 2 months.
Pero
Yes.
yung our rate is at acceptable level na ba or not yet?
Personally, I would like to see the R value at 0.5 and below. No? 0.75, 0.8 is still for me, although it's less than 1, no, for me, talagang dapat mas vigilant ako ngayon. I will try to lower it. Kung meron tayong target sa sarili natin, target para sa community natin.
Pero yung positivity rate is still high, no? Kasi dapat less than 5%. But that depends also on the number of testing.
It depends on the number of testing, no. Pero ang testing kasi natin maganda na, no. Our reporting is it's better than what we had the first quarter of the year, no. We have had a positivity rate of as high as 15%, 16, 18% before. Now it's down to 8%. Quite encouraging, no. Kaya lang, it's still not the 5%.
So let me ask Bot. But are there?
All right, sorry na. I just
Kapag ka ganyan, pag narinig mo ganyan,
right.
umaayos na daw yung
Mm-mm.
sitwasyon. Ano ang
Yeah.
magiging reaksyon ng Pilipino dyan?
Siyempre, una, ito, keywords, pag-asa. Okay? Kasi kung sundan natin yung pinakita ni Doc Butch na yung slides dito, pababa siya. So, may pag-asa na maari tayong hindi tayo makakabalik 100% sa dati. Pero may pag-asa tayong babago yung sitwasyon. Which is what everybody is actually really waiting and hoping and looking for. Kaya, very timely ang warning ni Doc Butch that at the same time, hindi dapat magpapabaya. So,
pero do you think the Filipino will exactly feel that? Na, pwede na akong pwede na akong mag-beach. Or pwede na akong pumunta ng mall. Yung ba ang magiging reaction yan? Yung ba magiging reaction?
May friend ako na nag-beach. Okay. Right? Nag-picture siya. Pinicture ang sarili niya na, syempre, nakatalikod. Pero may sunburn na kaagad. So sabi niya, kahit gusto niya yung beach, mag-ingat daw pa rin. So some keywords to remember. One, kung susundan natin dito, yung pinapakita ng Okta Research, may pag-asa. Two, wag magpabaya. So keywords. Maybe it could be, we could find another way to rephrase that para may maging something that would help us, keywords to help us remember how to live our lives in this increasingly different normal. I'm not even using the word new normal. I'm using the word different normal because it's not after how many months of quarantine, hindi na to new. It's a different normal that we have already. So, kung may pag-asa, wag magpabaya at parating mag-ingat. I'm not sure kung
so, yung kasi dyan, halimbawa, when Butch says to be vigilant, that is not, there's nothing in Filipino that actually says that, no?
Meron.
Ako, nagsusulat ako sa Pilipino. Pero meron ba, magbantay? Parang hindi siya natural.
Mag-ingat. Take caution. Mag-ingat. Ingat. Ingatan mo sarili mo. Look, common phrase para makaiwas ng sakit. Ingatan mo sarili mo. So, we get to hear this now in this new pandemic season because we're teaching online. And so our schedules have been affected kasi work from home is now also work at home, which means that we no longer have as faculty that barrier that separates us. Pag uwi natin, naiwan muna yung problema sa opisina. Hindi, bit-bit pa natin yan dito eh. Right? So, ano yung watchword dito?
That actually opens a can of worms, no?
Oh, yes. Because, look, this is a new situation.
I'll ask this na kaagad, kasi nung araw naman, meron bang ganung distinction nung araw?
Ingatan mo yung sarili mo?
Hindi, yung between home and work.
Meron. Pag-uwi, look, I have so many colleagues na pag-uwi nila, naiwan na sa opisina, they manage to adapt a mindset na pag nakauwi na, iniwan yung problema sa opisina. There are others like me, na pag-uwi ko, bit-bit ko pa yung papers ng mga estudyante ko, lalo na pag-weekend. We all do that. But in this a time of online learning and teaching, hindi na distinguishable yung workspace at home at yung rest of the domestic space. I mean, here, kung wala yung background ko, kikita mo yung salad dito.
Before we go to that, kasi gusto ko lang balikan yung sinasabi ni Doc Butch na, what were you proposing, Butch? And the cultural anthropologist has a say.
Yeah, even if we are declared COVID-free, hopefully at the end of the year, the Filipinos, tayo as a culture, as a society, hopefully we imbibe this culture of resilience and prevention, just like our
I'll say what Butch cannot say. Kasi yung pagmamaskara, we associate that with being Chinese, Korean, and palagay mo ba matututo tayo mag-mask, mag-face mask? At saka syempre sa Amerika, di ba, ayaw nila mag-mask.
Ayaw nila yun. Alam mo yun, Depende sa creativity din natin. Ang dami dito, makikita mo, pinagtitripan nila yung mask nila eh. Bibili yung mask na merong nakangiti dito. It's really disconcerting, but it also reduces yung fear, attention that you feel from seeing people having to wear masks all the time. Pero,
so kailangan hindi siya talaga nakakatakot. Or pwede siyang panakot. Pwede mag-work.
Oy, what do you think I've been looking for? But that's my sense of humor. Ito there's another thing you could think about. Kasi, how do you change the meaning? How do you introduce a new meaning of the mask? Kasi, we often say, magsuot ka ng mask para hindi ka mahawa. So, the notion of infection, Saturday's medicine. How about introducing the mask para hindi ka manghawa? Taking care of other people.
Mas bebenta yun sa Pilipino.
We can try.
Pagka
We can try. Kasi sasabihin mo, mag-ingatan mo sarili mo at ibang tao. Kasi you're appealing to the sense of group, yung other-centered sa Pinoy, yung kapwa mo. So yung kapwa mo, iprotektahan mo siya kaya magmamask ka. Yung concept of kapwa. Remember, both the Ateneo and UP Departments of Psychology and the Department of Anthropology and the IPC had been debating this and applying this concept of kapwa since the 70s. There's a lot of debate and research and publications on both sides. And so if you come up with this joint idea of how to teach how to make the wearing of the mask part of the new different normal, in that it's not just simply to protect yourself, because that's what most people think of it. Tinatakot mo, kailangan kong protect ang sarili ko. Ngayon, responsibilidad ko to, poprotektahan ko yung kapwa ko. That introduces a whole new different element, and maybe we could explore that.
If I may, the association, the fear that is associated now with wearing of masks, and all the other precautions, actually, it's because of the COVID-19 situation. Now, what I really wanted to advocate was wearing of masks as a general protective mechanism against the flu, against measles, against any other.
You're saying, Butch, na pag nagmamask, parang for a lot of people, they feel that there's still a pandemic.
Yeah,
but there's still a pandemic.
People will feel that way because right now in the country, masks are associated with SARS-CoV-2. But that's also what happened in our Asian neighbors. When they wore masks, there was SARS-1. So, pero ngayon, it's a well-accepted.
Pero baka yun yung kinalaman sa sinasabi ni Bot, yung Pilipina naghahanap kasi ng hope. Signs of hope.
Hope, and one other factor which I want to is family. Kapag nag-mask ka, you're not only wearing a mask to protect yourself or to protect other people, but to protect the family. I like what Bot said now, na yung home and workplace are one. That's now, but once the industry is open, magkakaroon na tayo ng workplace in the
Speaking of somebody who is violating the quarantine, do you want to weigh in, Dr. Vallejo? And what are you doing in the middle of Manila?
He's an A4 siya, authorized outside of residence.
Anyway,
I don't think you are. That is not part of the Manila Bay. That's just part of the inundated area, Dr. Vallejo.
No, but we have to start, starting to prepare for the training of our cooperating government agencies.
Excuse me. Now so, I know I have to wear a mask.
About about wearing masks. I think tama yung sabi ni Butch, kasi when I went on training in Japan, if you wear a mask, then it tells everybody that you are preventing other people from catching the cold. So sa Japan nga, pag konting sipon lang, mask na kaagad, automatic na yun eh. So pag winter, ang dami naka-mask. Wala sa kanila yun. Okay?
Let me ask Bot, yung bang sipon sa atin may ibang kahulugan? Meron bang... Kasi sa West kasi di ba, God bless you, parang may lumabas sa yung spiritu. Sa atin ba merong ganong kahulugan?
Actually, not that I know of. Except only that in folk medicine, this is related to seasonal change. Siyempre, alam natin, from scientific point of view, it's a viral infection. It's also vulnerability kapag hindi ka nagpapahinga. But otherwise, in the traditional agricultural-based worldview, it's based upon seasonal change. Yan.
Actually, so handa siya ng patapos na yung Pasko, no? Yung Enero kasi.
Ganon. Yan.
Madaming
Actually, I also wanted to gusto ko din yung sinasabi ni Butch kasi kung maaari din baka maging bagong normal natin. Yung bagong practice. There's also another reason why I think wearing a mask would be much better kung sa protection pinag-usapan. And that's because the nature of urban living. Diba?
Na mas nagkakahawahan.
Tumataas talaga yung level of air pollution. I've been thinking about doing that now every time I go out because of that issues.
Baka kailangan gas mask ang
I hope not.
I'd like to add to Bot's statement. No, meron tayong in the anthropological sense in our culture, no, wearing of mask can be likened to pakikipagkapwa.
Yes,
no?
That's the one.
The being neighborly, the each other, no. Kasi ngayon masks kasi are it's fear, takot.
Yes.
No? Takot na mahawa ka.
Unfortunately,
At a kind of Ben, a kind of imposed behavior.
Yes. Oo.
You need to follow kasi authority.
But if we look at masks and what they really do, no, it's actually pakikipagkapwa sa isa't isa. Na we are protecting you. I am protected from whatever you're carrying, whatever, no, from the environment, no, from the flu, the air, etc.
So just to so that we get hopefully media will pick this up. Butch, do you think this is crucial at this stage? Itong cultural change na to, which is like, we're in the middle of a cultural battle here.
Yes,
actually, yes.
Yes, for me. I think following the trends of the other countries, especially Asian naman sila, so we share a common culture, no. We have a lot of flu deaths also in the country. We have had deaths from COVID. We have had deaths from chickenpox and measles, which can all be prevented din naman if we have a high level of resilience and prevention. And wearing of masks is actually one of those ways to decrease the number of deaths and number of people who get sick, especially those who are always out, no? Yung mga namamalengke, pumunta ng bangko, pumunta sa opisina. So
more than anything else, this will be the most important preventive therapy.
Not the most important.
Not the most important.
No. The most important for me is the hygiene. The personal hygiene.
That's let's go ask that to both. Hygiene daw. Pero di ba yung paano mo malalaman kung may katabi kang Pilipino dun sa abroad? Kung amoy sabon. Lahat mabaho, yung pag-amoy dial.
The evidence speaks for itself.
So kung hindi mabango pero amoy sabon.
Meron pang amoy malinis. Ganda ng language.
Our Filipino, pero ang problema, ang sinasabi nila, ang Pilipino malinis sa sarili niya. Pero yung paligid hindi.
You know, when I was in Singapore, no, I was riding the train, no, and then ang bango naman, amoy fabric softener. And then bigla may talong sa likod ko, Pinoy nga. Amoy fabric softener.
Diba? Yung nakikita niyo ba to yung title, cover ng book ng dad ko, yung folk medicine? Hindi. Anyway.
Akin na lang yan.
Na-blur ang background. Ipapadalang kita ng kopya. Okay. Okay, nangako na to. Okay. Sa mga nakikinig, silang dalawa lang muna. I'm just kidding. Look, yung sinabi mo about yung kalinisan. Yes, it is also prevalent din. Yung definition ng cleanliness extends to your personal space. Yes, it's true. Pero yung paligid, hindi. Why? Kasi you look at the cultural expression and how is space measured ba? And then yung limits of control mo over that space. So, within your own bakuran, doon ka responsible. Yun yung pananatiling malinis. And that's going to be another problem because that's related to Doc Butch's suggestion that we should make mask wearing normal. Why? Itong mask natin, ito yung ating part ng katawan na nakokontrol natin. Ay, yung paligid, hindi, nakokontrol ba natin yan o hindi? To that extent, that's why I mentioned, maybe yung pakikipagkapwa also means protecting others from me. Baka hindi ko alam kung asymptomatic ako. For example, right? The mask at least would provide some sort of degree of protection. Pero that's me. Now, if you switch from protecting yourself to protecting others, in-extend mo ngayon yung reach ng bakuran mo. Right? Yung concept mo ng cleanliness, yung concept mo ng protection, in-extend mo siya. And so that means...
Dapat mag-extend.
Dapat mag-extend, which means to address this, to make this more and more general, you would have to introduce some sort of a campaign to introduce this concept ng extension mo ng personal care, hindi lang yung sarili, pero yung iba. To bring down yung concept ng kapwa and to make it more, more concrete this
way. So ano ba talaga ang ibig sabihin ng pakikipagkapwa? Kailangan mag-mask ka, no? Mag-mask ka, maglinis ka. So kasama din yun. Pero gusto kong sabihin yun, na yung that we are able to decrease the number of the R rate, not because of some grace of God or the goodness that God gives us, but it's because we comply to the minimum health protocols. I think the Filipinos can understand that kaya natin, no? Kaya natin to effect change in our environment, no? Kaya natin kung gugustuhin natin, di ba? So we need to emphasize that as well. Na it's not by some magic that we're able to do this.
I'll add further. So yung sinasabi natin extension ng ating sarili, no? Hindi naman talaga tayo foreign sa ganyang konsepto. If you recall yung Tapat Ko Linis Ko program way many decades ago, no, that's a dengue that's an anti-dengue program, no? Tapat Ko Linis Ko yung mga puddles.
Ayoko yung isang version niya, Butch, basura ko. Hindi lang yung basura mo itapon mo, no? Oo. Gusto ko yung tapat ko, linis ko. Pero yung basura ko, itapon ko. So, kasi pwede itapon sa labas eh.
yung konsepto ng pag-extend ng sarili natin, actually, hindi naman talaga foreign talaga sa atin.
Yes.
And we've been practicing that with our anti-dengue campaign.
From a public health point of view, kailangan din talaga, di ba, sa yung hindi lang fumigation, yung disinfection from the barangay level, the barangay local barangay, disinfection, di ba?
Yes.
And then pero so if Justin is listening, pero nakita ko kunyari doon sa Sky Cable, ando pa din yung campaign to make your own face mask. Is that are you supposed to make our own face mask, or are we supposed to use a certain kind of face mask?
Right now, the one of the updates of the CDC is that it is aerosol transmitted already, no?
Right.
So if it's aerosol transmitted, it's in smaller droplets talaga in the air, which can pass through the mesh of our cloth masks. So I would still recommend the wearing of the at very least the 3-ply surgical mask. At the very least.
So do you think both hindi na natin nabalikan yung therapy mo, no? But let's end with that. So there's hope, Butch, there's hope. But we need to clarify that kasabay ng hope is the sense na kailangan ng pag-iingat. Kailangan ng pag-iingat.
Yeah.
But then what will be your final on therapy? Paano ba gumagaling yung Pilipino kadalasan?
Yung pasyente? Okay. When I did this research, personal research then on schizophrenia several years ago, okay, ang isang pasyenteng na-interview ko for that research was a patient with schiz. He was a university student at one of the big universities. One day, nadaan ako sa shop, he called out to me. Turns out, nakagraduate na siya. Okay? So, na-release siya. No? Ang one of these things, many of us think that pag may mental health, parang nawawala ka sa sarili, depression reality. Hindi. Many of these guys were self-aware that there was something wrong. Ang kinakailangan nila, may kausap sila na may pag-asa. So that keyword, hope, pag-asa. Paano mo titibayin yung loob ng pasyente? Bigyan mo siyang pag-asa na pwede pang matuloy yung buhay niya. Bibigyan mo siyang pag-asa. This is totally different, of course. Dr. Butch will tell us this. This is totally different, of course, pag physical ailment na yung pag-usapan, because in some cases, pag terminal na, ay ibang usapan niya. That's a whole different discussion altogether in terms of ethics, in terms of patient care, in terms of end of life. But as far as quality of life is concerned, kung meron siyang, kung mamulat siya na meron pang pwedeng mapaghawakan at mahugot. And then that's another word that we found in that study, the word hugot. Okay? The word tibay, the word hugot. And it's very interesting that yung isang word is structural metaphor. Yung background ni Butch, yung building, dito yung background mo, Butch, the building, yan. That is the metaphor of a person na matibay. Ang tagal-tagal na yung building na yan, hindi pa natitibag. Okay?
Saan ba yan,
Pero
boy?
yung metaphor ng mental illness, pag yung building na yan ay gumuho, that is the metaphor sa mental illness, bumigay. And in the list I showed you, depression, suicide, alcoholism, schiz, pati yung possession. Na ano siya? Bumigay. So, anong gagawin mo? Tuturuan mo yung tao paano patibayin yung sarili niya. My friends in the psychiatric profession had told me all sorts of stories about how they struggle to help the patient find a sense of direction, and from there may huhugutan. But the term hugot comes out recently often. Saan ka nakukuha dito sa loob? So one is a structural metaphor para hindi bumigay, at yung isa, saan ka kukuha ng pangpatibay ng iyong pag-iisip. See? Of course, this can be refined even further because there are some elements that
But in a
can
way,
be
parang
changed
ano din siya, no?
around.
Immunology. Kailangan magpatibay ng loob.
Oh. Well,
All right.
immunology for the mind, if you like to call it that way,
Yes.
immunology of the spirit.
And there's evidence now that the two are intrinsic, they are very related, no? Yung strength of mental health at saka immune system.
Yeah.
All right.
Very true.
So I think we have barely scratched the surface on the indigenous medicine, but notice that indigenous medicine is not just things that you drink, it's really mental state. All right. So yun ang indigenous medicine natin. All right. So I think we have lots more to cover next time, but I think they told you that you should be a regular in this show.
Oh my gosh.
So maybe every 2 weeks.
No, I'm going to
month.
find out now.
Now you know. All right, because we have lots to cover. All right, so you can say bye for now to our audience.
Right. Okay. Kamusta na lang ulit mga kapang Katipunero at Katipunera in all sides of Katipunan, and a special shout out to my friends and colleagues from both PGH and ASMPH, especially the Department of Psychiatry. Miss ko na kayo guys. It's been a long time since we last saw each other. So, kamusta na lang sa inyong lahat. Right.
Welcome. See you soon again. Right. And then Doc Butch.
All right. Just to let you know, the background here is the Diplomat Hotel, the haunted Diplomat Hotel in Baguio. All right. So, my final message is this: no, we've been talking about wearing masks and social distancing as an individual effort. Now we are talking about wearing masks and all the other physical distancing measures as a cultural and societal effort. So, mas maganda nga ngayon pag-usapan that we are really trying to heal as one society, no? Not just as an individual or as a community, sa barangay, LGU, no? But as a nation, no? And our culture is as much a part of the solution, no? As it is a challenge for all. So for now, that's it. I hope to see you guys again next week. For another, I hope what will be available also next week. Maganda pinag-usapan natin. I love it.
Let me know. All right.
All right. Okay. So that's our show this afternoon. Ang kung saan tayo hugot, definitely from our own culture. All right?
Right.
So see you next time.
See you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.